So our last thesis for today is Valerie, and wow, we've it's gone through. It's been a road to travel, hasn't it? But it's come out pretty good, and so we're excited about that. Valerie has some words to say. She says, "I would like to thank everyone who was there when I was at my breaking point, when I crashed out, and when I bawled my eyes out over Thesis. But above all, I thank God who sent all of them to keep me from going insane. Special thanks and apologies to Mr. Wade and Miss Maymay, who put up with my overdue submissions and accepted my assignments weeks past their deadlines. I hope that this presentation does justice to the support you've shown me." I think it will. Your title is Sounds Like a Skill Issue. Why life skills education should be integrated into the K-12 curriculum. All right, give me a couple of seconds to set up my timer, and then I'll tell you when you can start. All right, you can start whenever you're ready.
For 13 years, the education system has acted as a tutorial, a carefully designed simulation with structured schedules, standardized objectives, and guided steps at every turn. Students learn the rules of the game and are taught to clear and master every level. Then, the moment they walk off the graduation stage, the game changes. What was once a linear path with checkpoints becomes an open world with self-determined objectives. The skills from the tutorial still matter, but it was never designed for the levels that come after. In the classroom, one failure is simply a low-stakes grade that can be averaged out by the next assignment. In the real world, it involves credit scores, mental health, and relationships, where the cost of a mistake isn't a point deduction. Despite this, we handed students a diploma and called them prepared. Perhaps it's time we reconsider what that preparation should actually look like. In ancient times, education began as an informal process of survival, beginning with hunter-gatherer societies where children naturally acquired skills like hunting and foraging through play, observation, and imitation of parents' behavior. As civilizations became larger and more complex, the rise of record-keeping and commerce required a formal system to teach literacy and numeracy taught by teachers, leading to the birth of formal education approximately 5,000 years ago. In the industrial era, education became more standardized, but it was largely designed to produce more obedient laborers for the workforce. In response to this rigid conformity, modern education has transitioned towards a more holistic approach, leading to the emergence of the term life skills in the late 20th century, focusing on mental well-being, violence prevention, and overall career success. Life skills are defined by the World Health Organization as the psychosocial abilities that enable individuals to deal effectively with the demands and challenges of everyday life. These skills include decision-making, problem-solving, critical thinking, creative thinking, interpersonal relationship skills, effective communication, self-awareness, empathy, coping with skills, and coping with emotions. Although the concept of life skills education, or LSE, was established only 30 years ago, its necessity had become urgent, as many adolescents lack the life skills needed to handle the increasing stress of modern life. Even among schools who have attempted to implement it, coverage remains inconsistent. Students built purely on academic achievement without the foundation of personal development will eventually crack under the weight of life after graduation. Therefore, schools should integrate life skills education into the K-12 curriculum to equip students with skills needed for life, because it maximizes personal growth, ensures students master the cognitive, social, and emotional dimensions of life skills, and because it fulfills the fundamental obligation and purpose of education to develop the whole person. LSE ensures that children master the necessary skills at each developmental stage, enabling them to successfully reach their respective milestones. From ages 3 to 13, Erickson identifies 3 developmental stages that shapes a child's sense of purpose, competence, and identity. Without structured support at each stage, children risk developing excessive guilt, inferiority, and confusion about who they are. LSE intervenes at each point, not to remove difficulty, but to ensure that when children struggle, they grow through it. Furthermore, integrating LSE into the curriculum strengthens and facilitates improved academic outcomes. Despite receiving the same content and instruction, no two students will experience or process learning the same way. Now think of it as a computer CPU. When too many programs run at once, it overheats and lags. The human brain works the same way. When students are overwhelmed, the brain's capacity for meaningful learning is reduced. Students will inevitably encounter these pressures, and without the internal tools to manage them, their academic performance is likely to suffer. LSE equips students with stress management skills that enable them to better cope with academic pressures and challenges during high-stakes periods like examination week, ensuring they remain focused rather than being overwhelmed by pressure. Lastly, LSE builds self-efficacy, the belief that a person is capable of succeeding at a task. Without guidance, repeated failure leads students to stop believing that trying will change anything. This is known as learned helplessness, where they convince themselves they are simply not capable and nothing will ever improve. LSE creates the conditions to develop self-efficacy. It gives students manageable tasks that they can succeed at, exposes them to peers who overcame the same struggles, affirms their capabilities, and builds the emotional experience of what it feels like to push through difficulty and come out on the other side. A student who walks into an examination believing that they can endure it is far less likely to give up halfway through. They try harder, persist longer, and ultimately feel a deeper sense of contentment in themselves. Not because the exam was easy, but because they believed they could face it. LSE enables students to develop the essential life skills across 3 core dimensions: cognitive, social, and emotional. They are necessary for navigating life challenges. Beyond the classroom, adolescents face situations that demand clear thinking, yet many lack the guidance to do so. A student who cannot think critically is more susceptible to misinformation, peer pressure, and manipulation, often making decisions based on emotion or social pressure rather than reason. After graduation, they face significant financial, career, and relationship decisions, all of which demand the same thinking skills. What these students are missing is not intelligence, but structured cognitive training. Creative thinking generates new ideas and solutions, while critical thinking evaluates their validity and determines which works. Together, they fuel effective problem solving, and the selection of the best solution from all available options is ultimately what decision-making is. Adolescents equipped with these thinking skills are less likely to engage in risky or unhealthy behaviors and are better positioned for lifelong learning and meaningful contribution to society. Second, LSE develops the interpersonal skills needed to build and sustain relationships. Being social comes naturally to humans, but communicating effectively, navigating conflict, and maintaining meaningful relationships does not develop on its own. Through structured discussion and collaborative projects, students learn to convey their needs clearly, listen actively, and interpret nonverbal cues rather than being left to figure out these complexities alone. Since conflict in a relationship is inevitable, LSE teaches students to view disagreement as an opportunity to strengthen bonds. Students first learn to manage their emotional responses so that conversations lead to understanding and not escalation. Furthermore, these tools help individuals evaluate the health of their relationships, providing them with the empathy and respect needed to either preserve a connection or move on when a relationship no longer serves them. And third, LSE strengthens the emotional skills students need to manage the pressures of school and adult life. Stress is a natural biological response, but much like a fire alarm triggered repeatedly by burnt toast, it loses its protective function when activated too frequently. When academic demands, relationships, and identity formation all collide, chronic stress erodes the student's well-being and ability to focus. In LSE, students learn to identify their stressors, understand how stress affects them personally, and develop the coping strategies they need to bounce back. Research has shown that resilience is not an innate trait. It can intentionally be built. Beyond stress, LSE also develops emotional regulation, the ability to identify, differentiate, and constructively process complex emotions. Students who lack these skills are more prone to distress and struggle to express themselves in ways that are healthy for themselves or others around them. Rather than reacting impulsively, students trained to LSE learn to name their emotion, trace them to a source, and focus strictly on what remains within their control, responding to challenges in a measured and constructive way. Education was meant to prepare whole human beings for life, yet its current methods have created a gap that leaves graduates underprepared for the world waiting beyond the classroom. Despite years of formal schooling, many graduates enter adulthood without the fundamental life skills needed to function independently. The traditional classroom positions the teacher as the sole authority and students as passive listeners. This lecture test cycle creates a transactional environment where students study for grades, not growth, effectively killing their curiosity. Life skills cannot be transmitted this way. They require active practice, behavioral rehearsal, and real experience. As the saying goes, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. According to a Suntra survey, 94% of employers believe life skills are just as important as, if not more important than, academic results. Yet 68% of them say graduates lack the necessary life skills and workplace competencies. The modern workforce no longer rewards those who can simply memorize and reproduce information. They want a graduate who can think, communicate, and adapt. According to the World Economic Forum, critical thinking is the most sought-after skill for the next 5 years. Graduates who possess it experience less unemployment and are more likely to secure skilled positions faster. Effective communication, teamwork, resilience, and emotional regulation follow close behind, all of which are built in LSE. These are the core of what makes a graduate hireable. Integrating LSE fulfills something deeper, the fundamental obligation of education to develop a whole person. Conventional education has strayed far from this. Driven by market forces, schools have become commodities that prioritize material success over the spiritual and emotional development of students. The mind is treated like data storage, while the heart and soul of learner are left unattended. Robin Berlew identifies 3 levels of educational goals: immediate, intermediate, and ultimate. Most schools only reach the first 2, passing classes and gaining qualifications. The ultimate goal, the long-term flourishing of students and a life well lived, is consistently overlooked. This is reflected in UNESCO's 4 pillars of education. While schools focus on learning to know, to do, and to live together, they neglect the most vital pillar, learning to be. It refers to the full development of a human being, their intellectual, moral, and physical dimensions. LSE restores this balance by creating a holistic curriculum that empowers individuals to build not just successful careers, but meaningful, purpose-driven lives and a complete sense of self. Some believe the responsibility for teaching life skills belong to parents rather than schools. Sociologists argue that the family is the first and most important agent of socialization during childhood, as it shapes children's self-concept and identity. Children learn by watching their parents. They absorb values, boundaries, and social norms long before they enter a classroom. However, the school environment introduces more complex social dynamics that the home could not provide. Unlike the mandatory and hierarchical nature of the parent-child relationship, peer friendships are voluntary, and members can choose to engage or withdraw from the relationship at any time. Within these peer groups, children test and experiment the values they learned at home rather than just listening to adults' instructions. Moreover, even parents themselves considered life skills essential for children, but admitted that the home alone is insufficient, calling for educators to share the responsibility. Parents and schools are therefore not competing for this role. Both are necessary, and schools bear an equal obligation to provide a structured life skills education. Others argue that life skills are more effectively acquired through real-life situations, particularly through extracurricular activities, or ECAs, during after-school hours. In this perspective, LSE remains confined to conceptual teaching in a classroom that cannot truly simulate the real world. Why spend resources and time to develop an entirely new curriculum just to teach life skills when making ECA participation mandatory is already enough? It teaches children to communicate and collaborate with fellow members, manage their positions and responsibilities. However, making ECAs mandatory does not resolve the problem, as it is activity-based by design, and its effectiveness depends on a student's willingness to engage with the activity. More critically, no single ECA can systematically cover all 10 life skills. A student in a sports team may develop teamwork and resilience, but where does empathy fit in? Studies found that ECAs promoted life skills only moderately, and that this development was largely unintentional because ECA supervisors are coaches and specialize only in their field, not trained life skills educators. This does not mean ECAs have no value. It's quite the opposite. ECAs and LSE are complementary to each other. Skills in LSE can directly be applied within ECAs, providing a practical environment to practice these skills. Throughout the speech, we have discussed the reasons for integrating life skills education into the K-12 curriculum. It ensures that children reach their developmental milestones, strengthens their academic performance, and builds the self-efficacy they need to face challenges ahead. Through its 3 dimensions, it equips graduates to think critically, connect meaningfully with others, and manage under pressure. Ultimately, it fulfills what education was truly meant for, to prepare students not just for exams, but the whole person for the reality of life. In this sense, LSE is not a side quest or a low-priority bonus level. Rather, it is the mechanic of how to live. At the beginning of a game, a system provides prompts to tell you which buttons to press, giving you specific situations where you must use the abilities immediately. But as the story progresses, the prompts disappear. You are thrown into situations where you must use and combine the skills you have learned to find a way forward. Real graduation is the moment the guided path ends and your own journey begins. There will be no need to always reach for the help menu because you already have the tools needed to navigate the open world of adulthood. If the goal of education is to truly prepare a student for their life ahead, then the classroom must stop being a mere simulation of reality and start becoming a training ground for reality. First, recognize that the gap between classroom learning and real-world readiness is a systematic shortcoming, but the choice to fill it remains entirely yours. Second, advocate for a curriculum that treats life skills as an essential component rather than a secondary elective. Simply starting conversations with teachers, peers, or parents about what is missing from your education can go a long way. Finally, seek out the experiences. Be rooted in communities that build what the classroom has not. The open world has already begun, after all. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Valerie. We have, for panelists, Mr. Tony and Mr. Yos. We'll let Mr. Tony go first.
Yes. Thank you, Mrs. Strickland. Yeah, Valerie Sugiaman, congratulations, you finished your speech.
Thank you, Mr.
Good job. And I enjoy your topic. I think this is a topic needs to be discussed in our school. Yeah. And especially I really want to compliment the way that you write your paper. Yeah. Not so many times that I became panelist that my critics or my question is answered right through when I read. Yeah, this is one of the rare situation. Yeah, good job.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay, I have a few questions about your topic. Let's start with this one. When we are talking about our thesis in our school, we need also to think about biblical worldview. So, what do you think life skill education related to the Bible and biblical worldview?
Although it is a more universal concept, there is still biblical values that can be instilled through it. So, when I talk about children's development during the time that they're in school, it kind of complements each other. So, as you develop yourself as like Christ-like, life skills also help you understand it further, process it, and ultimately makes you internalize the values that are in the Bible. So somehow you could say it kind of overlaps.
Okay. Okay. Well, then I want to be more specific. There are so many aspects of life skill education, right? And you mentioned it in your speech also and in your paper. My question is, let's say self-efficacy, is it biblical or contra to the Bible values?
Self efficacy is the belief that you can succeed at a task. I don't think it really contradicts anything with the biblical values because it's more to like, although it sounds like you rely on your own abilities instead of like um, relying on God, but that talent, that ability is actually given by God. He entrusts you with those abilities so that there's a function that you need to fulfill. So, self efficacy is really about kind of like stewardship, but in the terms that you use the abilities that you are given by God for a good use.
Okay, good job. Yeah, let me ask a little bit further about this one. Yeah. Uh, this one first. When you are starting to study in Cahaya Bangsa,
In 11th grade, I entered here, so it's only been
okay,
2 years.
been only 2 years, yeah.
Yes,
So you have other school experience and Cahaya Bangsa experience.
that's right.
Can you evaluate your experiences in these two or more than two schools related to this LSE?
I will be explaining in an objective way, so I'm not going to really explain it personally.
Yeah.
In CBCS, I find that there's more biblical integration into each subject, into the programs that we have, into the activities that we do. And I really think that that's something that is really great. While in my old school, it's more towards academics. So it has the Cambridge curriculum. So we all just study for a GCSE, O levels, A levels. There is life skills education somehow. It's integrated as a subject, but I believe that it was only available like for several grade levels, so it's not all. I think as you grow older, they prioritize academics more. But the concept was there. The subject itself was called life skills. So that's what I can say about my old school. But in CBCS, I find that it's more integrated to each subject. So like even in this thesis, I learned so many life skills that I feel like I could have known and are really important for younger me.
Okay, good evaluation, yeah. And this is if you have some critics also, that is will be good, right, Mr. Strickland? Because this is how we develop ourselves, our school. Now let's moving forward to be more specific. You mentioned this in one aspect of your arguments, yeah, that extracurricular can be supplementary. Now, to a certain degree, there are some life skill aspect that actually can be achieved far more effectively using non-academic setting. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. So in that sense, should life skill education or those aspect is how to say, should we as an educator direct a few of the aspect towards non-academic area and some other in the academic area, and what are they? What are the aspect that you are suggesting?
So if the extracurricular activities are mandatory, is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Okay, then I believe that it has to be equal. I personally strive for balance in most things, so I believe that there isn't necessarily a certain life skill that should be in academics and a certain life skill that should be in those activities. Instead, it should be integrated wholly. So, as all 10 life skills are important, they can all be applied to many different situations in life. So that's why I believe that all 10 life skills should be present in both academics and non-academics.
One last thing. Let's in your explanation, you mentioned that this life skill should be integrated, just like you said, with the academic, the core content, the educational, usual educational subject, let's say like that. But if you need to choose between academic content and life skill ability, which one you need to prioritize and why?
That's actually a really good point, Mister. But I don't think that I'm not capable of choosing both because I believe that both are equally important. But sometimes most schools again focus primarily on academics, which therefore I believe that they should also put emphasis on life skills education. So like I said in my speech earlier, if if you have all the knowledge in the world, but you don't have the skills to, let's say, use it, it's the same as not effective or kind of useless. So I can't really choose between two because I believe both are really important, but I'm just striving for life skills education to be more prominent in most schools now.
Okay, well done. Yeah.
Thank you, Tony. Mr. Yos.
Right. Hi, Valerie.
Hi, Mr.
So, it's a good thing for you to take education as your thesis defense because, nowadays, even there's no way of the best to the best curriculum in this world yet now. And then I would like to follow up what Mr. Tony asked about, about life skill. So, do you think nowadays, in this modern days, in this modern education, there's no life skill in that lesson? In every lesson that you already learn, even in CBCS or maybe in the past in your previous school, do you think the life skill are not there, or is it already present?
Maybe the intention of educators when they develop the curriculum is there, but it's not deliberate enough that we realize and are aware that it's being developed. So the problem is that some schools only prioritize, again, academic performance. So even though it might develop life skills, like unintentionally, like for example, in Thesis, you learn to cope with stress, you learn to think critically, to evaluate information. It's not deliberate.
Okay, so if you're looking at today and also the future, the need of life skill, is it really important? Or having the one that the teachers already deliver you in the classes already enough?
Well, in my opinion, conventional education still lacks in life skills because there's been many studies and many research that I found. There has been so many data where employers basically say that the graduates nowadays don't have the life skills they need to work in their workplace. So therefore, there are so many reasons why it's very important to develop life skills in children. That's just one of the reasons for the workplace, but it's also for their life ahead.
Okay, thank you. So I'm gonna ask you because I'm teaching in a class, so I would like to be more detailed of my question right now.
Yes, Mr.
So if you say that life skills should not be graded with traditional standardized tests or memorization, if there are no regular tests or grades, so how can the school report to the teachers about their development?
That's actually a concern that many people would probably think about when they think of integrating LSE. But life skills are not equal to traditional subjects like math or science or calculus, let's say. It's not going to be in the form of grades like ABC or numbers like 95, but rather it's going to be evaluated. It's not going to be quantitative, but qualitative. It's going to be, the teachers are going to, I think in the study that I've read before, the teacher is the one that observes the child's development. They write reports and then submit it to parents and the school board themselves. So it's not about grading, but more to evaluating.
Okay, so which one is better for you? For what you said before, that it should be split. Like the life skills will have their own time to learn, and then for the other subjects, just to be learned in the classes. So what do you think? What if, I don't know, this is a question for you, a challenging question for you. Isn't it better to integrate the life skills into the lessons instead of to have the LSA?
Yes, I also personally believe that that is the more effective way because it's like hitting two birds with one stone, mister. So if it's a separate subject, like in the timetable, let's say 1 or 2 times in a week, it gives schools more of a challenge to reorder and think which academic subjects can somehow be reduced, or the time that the frequency and the time that the traditional subjects like math are being kind of reduced just to have this new life skills subject. So I agree with you, Mr. I do believe that it's better to integrate and instill these values, instill life skills education into the subjects. But then again, I only advocate for the concept, and it depends on the school.
Okay. Will it not be add more burden to the students?
That's actually addressed in my third refutation, Mister. So there is concern that students will be overloaded with all these things to worry about on top of grades and academic performance. They also need to worry about mastering life skills. Is that the concern that you're bringing forth? Now, in my paper, I also addressed that concern actually comes from the assumption that life skills education is equal to the traditional subjects with like heavy examinations and high risk grading, when in reality, life skills are actually transmitted through not like the lectures that normal classes come in the form of. It's like through collaborative projects or role play, and it's more about the experience rather than the knowledge, Mister.
Okay, so what do you suggest the best way to apply what you're doing right you're presenting right now? What is the best way so that the students are not going to be burdensome, and also they will enjoy? That's the biggest problem today, right? Because they are stressful. So what is the best way for them to enjoy without having more burden to their school or to their study?
In my first confirmatio, I think, in the third claim, I actually mentioned that LSE strengthens academic performance. So it's directly addressing the issue of stress that students have. It gives students the tools they need to manage the stress. So maybe by integrating LSE into the curriculum, it can give students the tools they need to kind of manage with the pressure and challenges of, well, academic achievement. So there is still somehow fun in that because, again, life skills education is not purely lecture, it's more to experience. There's also games and debates that make it a little more enjoyable than constant lecture and information, PowerPoints, notes. So, yeah.
Okay, I think that's all. Good job, Valerie.
Thank you, Mr.
All right. I have a couple of questions. So, Valerie, when I was a kid, no one ever talked about life skills, right? And I think, honestly, I think we had them. Maybe I'm wrong, but maybe I don't have life skills. I don't know. But, but when I was a kid, we didn't talk about it. In fact, when people started talking about life skills are missing, and when I was a electrical engineer, and I hired people all the time. And when we started noticing that the graduates don't have life skills, corresponds exactly to when kids were graduating who kind of grew up on cell phones, right?
Yes.
Cell phones, social media, short form videos, all of those things that sort of suck in the time of kids and they don't expose them to the real world, relationships, communication,
Yeah.
even exploration of information is different, right?
Yes.
And so, couldn't we say that one way to strengthen life skills is to get rid of the cell phone? What do you think?
Well, the internet, cell phones, digital devices are actually was actually a tool to kind of help with these challenges that people back then had. Like the most prominent example I could give you is communication. So now that there's the concept of texting and video calling, it gives people more. It brings them closer, but digitally, Mister. So it's not. It kind of reduces the time that you can have to face-to-face interactions. To let's say you have a conflict with someone, but you solve it through text. It's not really solving the issue. So, while I do believe that social media and those kinds of areas around it somehow have an effect to life skills, I don't think that removing it entirely is the solution because that's kind of impossible now that it's very instilled in so many people now, even the older generations. So what needs to be changed is how education is taught. Because somehow some people argue that education now is still stuck in the industrial era, where it's still focusing on conformity or obedience. Yeah.
Okay. And the other thing is, of course, that aside from cell phones and all that kind of stuff, I think we got LSE just at home, right? We interacted with the neighborhood kid, and nowadays kids don't know how to look each other, or I guess they do. They don't know how to look adults in the eyes very often, like you're doing now, which is great. But often we're missing those life skills, and maybe part of it is parenting. Some would say it's the job of the parents to bring up their kids that way, not the school. The parents ought to be in. This ought to be something important to parents, not teachers. What do you think about that?
Well, I do think that parents play a really important role with developing life skills to children. It's only foundational. There's more complex and intricate social dynamics that you will have to encounter once you leave your parents' house, you go for further studies, or you go for your jobs. So while I do believe that parents do play a role, it's not enough for just parents to do it. Because students nowadays, they spend 6, 7 hours, or maybe 8 hours in school, and then they go home, they have to do more work. So they spend less time with their parents, and maybe parents also have to work. They have other obligations that they must fulfill. So that's why I believe that schools also have this equal obligation to also teach life skills.
Okay, good. I just realized I went accidentally 2 minutes over your 20 minutes. So you're done. Good job, Valerie. Yeah, so we'll meet parents, friends, and family, panelists over here for photos, and then that's the last one.